Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're diving into something completely radical from the ancient Mahaprajna Paramita Sastra. We're going to explore this incredible, mind-bending idea that viewing our everyday reality as a kind of illusion isn't actually a bad thing at all. In fact, it might just be the ultimate key to living a completely fearless life.
But right off the bat, let's just address the giant elephant in the room. It's a massive philosophical paradox, right? If this ancient text says the world is empty and illusion-like, well, why does it feel so incredibly solid to us? Why does it physically hurt when we stub our toe? Why do our hearts race when we get angry or fall in love? If it's all just an illusion, why is our experience of it so intensely, undeniably real?
To answer that, we're going to decode the text's famous 10 metaphors of emptiness. We've got 6 quick sections to get through today, moving from the untouchable reality all the way to skillful liberation. Let's jump right in.
Starting with Section 1, the untouchable reality, where we need to grasp what emptiness actually means.
So, before we can navigate life's illusions, we have to define our terms. Our source material presents these 10 distinct metaphors, and our goal here is to deeply analyze them, to unpack a really profound meaning, that all phenomena in our lives are exactly like an illusion, a dream, or a shadow. Now, the text isn't saying the world doesn't exist at all. It's saying that the things appearing to us just lack a permanent, independent reality.
Look, the crucial point to take away here is that emptiness isn't some depressing, dark void where nothing matters. Not at all. It just means things are incredibly fluid. The text actually compares it to a master illusionist performing a magic trick. You can clearly see the illusion, you hear the music, you feel the awe, but you know the magic trick isn't entirely real or permanent. You can interact with it, you just don't grasp at it.
Which brings us nicely to Section 2, visual deceptions. Let's look at the mirage and the moon and water. So, let's explore how our eyes naturally deceive us. The Sastra brilliantly illustrates the human condition with this metaphor. Imagine a small child standing by a pond. They see the beautiful reflection of the moon and literally try to grab it out of the water. But an adult watching, they just laugh. They know it's simply an interplay of light, water, and space. There's absolutely nothing solid there to hold on to.
And the text explicitly contrasts these two mindsets for us. The ordinary person is like that child. We become completely attached to these visual illusions. We want to own them, and we suffer deeply when the reflection inevitably breaks. But the wise sage? They just smile. They can observe and totally enjoy the beautiful moon in the water without exhausting themselves trying to possess it.
Moving on to Section 3, sensory illusions, specifically the dream and the echo.
Let's step away from visual tricks for a second and see how our minds can create incredibly painful emotional reactions, essentially out of thin air. Think about how an echo actually works. It has 0 vocal cords, no brain, and definitely no malicious intention. Yet, an ignorant person wandering deep in a canyon might hear an echo, think someone is mocking them, and suddenly fly into a rage. They're generating real anger over an empty sound bouncing off a rock. Crazy, right?
And the source emphasizes that our dreams operate the exact same way. When we're asleep, we experience intense joy, sheer terror, or blinding anger over completely fabricated events. Our physical bodies might even sweat or cry. This proves, without a doubt, that our minds possess this incredible power to generate totally real suffering from totally unreal situations.
Okay, Section 4, Reflections of Existence, where we cover mirror images, shadows, and the Gandharva city.
Let's see how all of this builds into the physical constructs of our daily reality. Think about looking at your face in a mirror. The text points out a really profound logic here. Your reflection isn't created by the mirror alone, it isn't created by your face alone, and it certainly doesn't magically appear from nothing. It only exists because of a very specific temporary combination of conditions. Change just one condition and the image vanishes entirely, just like every single event, success, or failure in our own lives.
And then we have the Gandharva city. The text describes this thirsty, exhausted traveler running desperately toward what looks like a grand, beautiful city with castles and gates at sunrise. But as the day gets hotter, it just vanishes into thin air. It was a complete mirage. This perfectly captures how we exhaust ourselves chasing after worldly status, wealth, and ego. We're constantly running toward castles that are inevitably going to fade away.
So that brings us to Section 5, the unhindered wisdom. How do we live freely without getting stuck?
Because that's the real question, right? How do we actually live with these illusions without going crazy? Well, the text explains that when it truly clicks for you,
When you genuinely understand that the world is like a shadow or a magical transformation, your mind achieves this state of being completely unhindered. Because you see the emptiness of the illusion, you stop holding on to burning grudges against your enemies, and maybe even more importantly, you aren't trapped by your own successes. You just float through the conditions. It really comes down to the core difference between these two mindsets. Worldly wisdom is always trying to fiercely categorize, judge, and control the illusion. It's constantly grabbing at the water, which just leads to endless suffering. But the subtle wisdom of the sage, it simply observes. It allows you to perfectly engage with the world, taking action when necessary, but without getting your heart hopelessly tangled up in the outcome.
Finally, we reach Section 6, Skillful Liberation. This is all about helping others wake up from the dream.
Because this final step is about taking this profound knowledge and actually using it. The text emphasizes that true sages, they don't just run away from the world and hide in some cave. Instead, they follow these steps. First, recognize the illusion. Second, maintain a fearless mind. And third, and this is truly the genius part, they use the dream of life itself to expertly and compassionately guide others out of their own nightmares. They speak the language of the dream to wake the dreamer.
To illustrate this, the source material shares a fascinating story about two very different teachers. There was a rigid monk named Sheng Yi. He fiercely judged everyone's flaws, divided the world into strict categories of good and evil, and ultimately he fell into immense suffering. But on the other hand, there was the bodhisattva named Joyful Root. He taught his students something wild, that even our biggest flaws, our passions and our desires, are actually part of the ultimate empty reality.
Look at this quote from Joyful Root. It is absolutely mind-bending. He's telling his students that you do not have to violently destroy your emotions or hate yourself for having them. Instead, you just have to recognize their empty, dreamlike nature. By seeing that your anger and your greed are literally just echoes and mirror reflections, you instantly strip them of their power. You find profound peace right there, smack in the middle of the chaos.
So I'm going to leave you with this final thought as we wrap up today's explainer. The next time you are facing a massive challenge, a totally frustrating person, or a really heavy emotional burden, are you going to fight it like it's an unbreakable, solid wall? Or will you be able to smile knowing it's really just another ripple on the surface of the water? Thanks so much for joining me, and as always, stay curious.